everybody. morning, everybody. Welcome to City Hall, welcome to Council Chambers, and welcome to a meeting of the Los Angeles City Council for today, Tuesday, November 4th, 2003. The City Council meets every Tuesday, Wednesday, and Friday. Meetings are open to the public, and we do invite you to join us. For members of the public unable to attend council meetings, we can be viewed live on your cable station, Channel 35. We can also be viewed live via webcast from the city's homepage or heard via council phone. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Cardenas, Garcetti, Gruel, Hahn, Labange, Ludlow, Miskowski, Parks, Perry, Reyes, Smith, Villaraigosa, Weiss, and Padilla. 12 members present and a quorum, Mr. President.
Thank you very much. The council is officially in session. And before beginning with the matters appearing on today's agenda, let me call upon Councilmember Hahn to lead us in our Pledge of Allegiance.
Please rise. Join me in the Pledge of Allegiance to a great flag for a great country. Ready, begin. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Hahn. Madam Clerk, first order of business, please.
Approval of the minutes.
Mr. Labange moves and Mr. Reyes seconds.
Commendatory resolutions for approval.
Mr. Villaraigosa moves and Ms. Miskowski seconds.
On the regular agenda, Mr. President, items 1 through 5 are items noticed for public hearings, and they are street lighting district ordinances.
Okay, colleagues, items 1 through 5 now before us, and I do not have requests from members of the public to address the council on these items. Public hearings are open. Public hearings are closed. Are there any requests for specials on items 1 through 5? Items 1 through 5. Seeing no requests for specials, Madam Clerk, please open the roll. Please close the roll and tabulate the vote.
12 ayes.
Those ordinances are approved. Next item, please.
Item number 6 is also a public hearing item, and I believe there is a card that has been submitted from the public on
We
this
do
item.
have a card on item number 6. Let's call that special.
Next items are items for which public hearings have been held. Items 7 through 27. Items 7, 8, and 9 are confirmations of city officials.
Let's hold commissioner confirmations on the desk temporarily. Colleagues, items 10 through 27 now before us. Public hearings have been held on these items. A motion from the floor would be required to reopen the public hearings. Seeing no requests, any specials? Mr. Garcetti.
15 for Ms. Gruel, please.
15 for Ms. Gruel. Mr. Labange.
Yes. 13, please.
13
and 26.
Called special by Mr. Labange, and 26 as well. Any other specials? Any other specials on items 10 through 27? Seeing no further requests for specials, Madam Clerk, please open the roll. Please close the roll and tabulate the vote.
12 ayes.
Those items are approved. Next item, please.
Items for which public hearings have not been held. Items 28 through 57. 10 votes are required for consideration.
Okay, without objection, items 28 through 57 are before the City Council today. We do have cards on item 57. We'll call that special. On the balance of the items, we do not have requests from members of the public to address the council. Public hearings are therefore satisfied on items 28 through 56. Any requests for specials? Mr. Reyes.
Yes, thank you, Council President. 28, we can continue that to a Friday.
Okay, colleagues request to continue item 28 to Friday. That would be November 7th. Seeing no objection, item 28 is continued. Mr. Villaraigosa. 53 called special by Mr. Villaraigosa. Mr. Reyes.
Yes, thank you, Council President. Items 29 and 44, special, please.
29 and 44 called special by Mr. Reyes. Any other specials? Any other specials? Items 28 has been continued, 29, 44, 53, and 57 called special. Any other specials on 30 through 56? Mr. Labange.
I have an amendment on 50.
Okay, is that a technical amendment?
I'm not sure. I'll check with staff. but
Okay,
I'll let you know.
we'll call it special for you, Mr. Labange. On the balance of the items, Madam Clerk, please open the roll. Please close the roll and tabulate the vote.
12 eyes.
Those are approved. Forthwith on 54, please. Next. Forthwith on 52 as well. Next item, please.
On the continued agenda, item number 58 is an item notice for public hearing. It's a public finding of public convenience and necessity in Council District 11, and a motion is required.
Ms. Mizikowski. Okay, colleagues, item 58 is now before us, and I do not have speaker cards on 58. Ms. Mizikowski moves approval. Any further discussion? Seeing none, let's open the roll, close the roll, and tabulate the vote.
13 eyes.
58 is approved.
And I call 59 special.
59 call special by Ms. Mizikowski. And I believe that brings us back to items called special. Madam Clerk, is that correct?
That would be take council back to the commissioners. Items 7 and 8 are confirmations to the Cultural Affairs Commission.
Before
and
we
that-
bring them up, let me, I've been asked by the clerk to relay a brief announcement. The city clerk, as you all know, colleagues, the city clerk has submitted his certification of sufficiency of the referendum petition to repeal ordinance number 175471 relating to the operation of adult entertainment establishments to the City Council on Monday, November 3rd. The matter is currently scheduled to be considered in Council this Wednesday, November 5th. That would be tomorrow. If the Council acts to place this measure on an election, either the March 2004 presidential primary election or the city's primary election in March 2005, then we must follow the ballot argument process specified in Elections Code Section 346, which requires the ballot argument to be submitted within 15 days of certification. So that deadline is November 18th. Therefore, in case the council acts to place the measure on one of these two elections, I am requesting that anyone wishing to be designated as the author of the argument in favor of adopting this ordinance to notify my office in writing no later than Wednesday, November 5th at 3 p.m. And if you have any further questions, I'm certainly available to discuss the matter with you, as well as our clerk, Mr. Michael Carey. Madam Clerk, next order of business, please.
Items 7 and 8 are confirmations of the council president's appointments to the Cultural Affairs Commission, and the Arts, Parks, Health, and Aging Committee report recommends approval.
Okay, if they can come forward at this time, colleagues, items 7 and 8 are currently before us. We do have committee reports recommending approval of Ms. Raymer and Mr. Martinez. Is there any discussion, any questions or comments of the two commission nominees before us? Mr. Labange.
Mr. Weiss, did you want to speak first? I saw you motion. Come on, you go first, Mr. Weiss, because you were the previous chair. I yield time to Mr. Weiss.
I want to, you're just too gracious. And that's a great tie you got on there today, Mr. Labange. Is that a new tie?
It is a new tie.
Good for you.
Thank you.
Well, speaking of Mr. Labange's tie and matters cultural, it's great to have both of you willing to serve the city in this capacity. I know you quite well, Ms. Raymer, and I'm just delighted that you're going to continue to do this service for the city. It is all too unsung a task, and in this city where it's hard enough as it is to create sort of a civic culture and a civic fabric, what you do is all the more important. I mean, you really are the cultural glue in the city, and I just wanted to thank you for everything that you do, both here and philanthropically outside of your work with the city of LA. But before my time goes, I want to yield it back to Mr. Labange, because he wore this tie for a reason today. What was the reason, Mr. Labange?
Because I said I wanted to wear this tie that was given to me by Mario Machado. You know, Mario Machado is a great guy who's been involved in the arts, and it was sitting in my closet, and I said, my daughter usually picks out my ties, and I didn't like the one she picked it out, so I got in an argument, and I picked this one. God bless Mary Kate. But Lee Raymer has done a wonderful job for the city of Los Angeles for many, many years. Previously, as a deputy for Joel Wax, as an advocate for the art. And Dennis Martinez, artist, someone who lives in the 4th District. Lee lives in the 11th District. It's important to have advocates for art. Yesterday, Senator Jack Scott had a hearing up at the Dorothy Chandler Pavilion to talk about the tragic status of the arts in City Council and in the state, excuse me. We're 50, California is 50 for art spending for the Arts Council out of all 50 states, which is tragic, and we got to find a way to do something to make a difference. But members, I just think we have two great citizens of Los Angeles who both have passion, who both have knowledge and the skills to advocate. Senator Sheila Kuehl said you got to get tough. You got to be a voice for the arts, because sometimes artists are more interested in their arts than in their to do advocacy. So I want you to be advocates. And with my 20 seconds left, I want you to hold the time and ask Mr. Martinez, Ms. Raymer, to just say a few words about your vision for the arts and the importance of what you do.
Is this on? Well, you're right. I have done this a long time for the city, but I do it because I really like it. I care about the city. I care about the quality of life. I think the cultural life of the city is very important to our image in the world and to ourselves. And if you'll have me for another 5, I'd be happy to serve another 5.
For another 105.
Thank you, Council Member. It's a pleasure to be here with such a great advocate of the city as Ms. Raymer. I've been privileged to sit next to her for the last 4 years. Look forward to being next to her for the next 5 years. I also think it's important that the whole city have access to not only public art, but the public buildings that follow with some of the bond measures, and that we have some equity throughout the city so that this beautiful, great city will become even more so in the future.
Well, thank you both, Ms. Raymer and Mr. Martinez. Thank you both for your dedication to serve the city of Los Angeles. And as Nicole Kidman said when she accepted her Academy Award, she said, the reason why I'm doing this, and the reason why I'm so proud of this, is art is important. And art is real important, members, and we have to find ways to help art more. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Labange. Other members wishing to be heard?
Are we dismissed?
Seeing none, let's open the roll, close the roll, and tabulate the vote.
15 ayes.
Unanimous vote. Congratulations.
Thank you. Thank
And
you.
thank you both for serving the city. Forthwith on items 7 and 8, please. Next item.
Item number 9 is confirmation to the El Pueblo Monument Historical Authority.
Ms. Hakis, please come forward. Colleagues, this is also a confirmation of a commission appointment. We do have a committee report recommending approval. Are there members wishing to be heard on item number 9, confirmation of Ms. Hakis? Mr. Reyes.
Thank you, Council President. It's with great pleasure I stand in support of our appointee. I must say that in my years working in the community, Ms. Hawkins has been one of those persons that talked about not only what's good for my backyard, but what's good for the whole neighborhood. And she is of the point of view that if we can share our cultural richness, we can share our natural resources for all communities, that the whole neighborhood can rise with that level of care. And I've seen her work year after year as a volunteer, as a person who's been very devoted to the quality of life, for not only Mount Washington, but for Cypress Park and Lincoln Heights and Highland Park. Her devotion to Southwest Museum and advocacy there has been tremendous. And as we continue working on how we connect communities with the goal line, she's been there talking about how can we share this wealth. For that, Ms. Hawkins, I wanted to just say thank you so much for your hard work. I see you have a great fan club with you this morning, and it's that kind of support that makes this job that much more easier and effective. So thank you so much for your time and for your hard work, and it couldn't be a better person for this position. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Mr. Villaraigosa.
Yes, Mr. President, thank you for your appointment of Ms. Hawkins. Carol and I have known each other now for nearly 30 years, somewhere in that neighborhood.
I think you were 5 years old.
I was 5 years old back then. I like her even more. And in those 30 years, I can tell you, this is a woman that's been involved as an activist in her community, a civil rights activist, as someone who cares passionately about the safety net a woman who's been involved in her community over the many years that I've served here in the legislature, now in the council. And I can tell you that as the president of the Mount Washington Association, she has distinguished herself as a bridge builder and as someone who tries to not just talk about the Hill as it's known, but also the surrounding communities. She also was born and raised in Palo Verde, the barrio of Chavez Ravine that many of you know about. And her family actually lived in the area around El Pueblo. And so she's very excited, and as we are, to participate on this commission. She understands that this commission in many ways is one of the jewels of Los Angeles and the area that it represents, and I'm excited that she'll be serving El Pueblo and the city of Los Angeles to help us think through a new vision for what El Pueblo can look like. And congratulations, and as Mr. Reyes said, she not only has a fan club, she has a distinguished group of leaders of the Northeast area and Mount Washington, and we welcome them here as well.
Mr. Garcetti.
Thank you very much, Mr. President, and thank you, Mr. Reyes and Mr. Villaraigosa, for those great words. It is a great joy to be able to support Carol's nomination today, and it's wonderful to see all your friends that are here and all the activists that you've done so much with in Northeast Los Angeles. I think a lot has been said, but I've had the joy of working with Carol on a number of projects. First, we got to know each other during a youth convention at the same time as the Democratic National Convention. And Carol, as well as Bill, her husband, just impressed me with their amazing commitment to young people in this city and to making sure that people aren't just given lip service but true empowerment. And you were an unwavering voice for justice for the community, but also for young people, which was so important. And I've come to know both of them, Bill and Carol, as friends. Their daughter Maya spoke at my swearing in, which was one of the great honors for me to have a young person there speaking on behalf of the community as well. I think you could be easily a cultural affairs commissioner today. Could have been you in the last round, but El Pueblo needs you. You have done so much, whether it's Southwest Museum, the Angels Project. You've really made your impact, not just in the Northeast Los Angeles, but in this city. This is a no-brainer, colleagues. I know this will go through unanimously, but it really is one of the smartest appointments we've made this year. And El Pueblo needs you to really help it continue the momentum that it has right now. But let's make it something that is a cultural tourism destination, not just for Angelinos, not just for the occasional visitor, but people who will come and stay more than a few hours there, but maybe in downtown and actually spend day after day there, because it is such a jewel and such a treasure. I know you know that. Now you're going to do an extraordinary job, so you have my fullest support, and thanks to all our friends for coming down too.
Thank you, Mr. Garcetti. Other members wishing to be heard? If not, I think I know how this is going to go. Let's open the roll, close the roll, and tabulate the vote.
15 ayes.
Unanimous vote. Congratulations and thank you for serving the city. Forthwith on item number 9, please.
I just want to say thank you to you, President of the City Council, and thank you, Antonio, also for recommending me. And thank you to all of you who voted for me. And I'm going to do my best and to make this a premier public destination, not only a place that tourists can come to and visit, that we can be proud of, but that the community at large will come to. And I want to say that I saw you at the City Council the other day, and I was very impressed with your ability to work together. And I will recall what Margaret Mead said, that never estimate the ability of a few individuals to make a difference. It has always been so, and I believe that this City Council will make a difference, as will all these leaders from Northeast Los Angeles, to make Los Angeles a better place for all of us. And I'm honored personally, but I'm also honored for those immigrants, and our ancestors that came here many years ago that gave their lives in poverty in many ways. You honor all of us. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Forthwith on item number 9. Next item, please.
Item number 6 was called special inasmuch as there are cards from the public and it is a building and safety assessment of confirmation of assessment.
We do have one card on item number 6. The council calls forward, I believe it's Cyrus Omid or Omed. Colleagues, item number 6 is now before us. This is public comment. Go ahead.
Do we speak here, sir?
Yes, sir.
I've prepared a written statement, if I may read that for.
Go ahead, sir.
Pardon me, I'm very nervous right now. Should I read the statement by the owner first? I have submitted these as part of my package to the council.
Okay, if it's submitted, then that's certainly in the materials before us. You're free to either read a statement or to provide verbal testimony, but you have a few minutes here. This is your opportunity.
Thank you, sir. This is a reference to the property at 4515 South Broadway. It's been a source of financial nightmare for her since 1996. Shortly after she purchased the property in 1996, she realized we received a notice from the Department of Building and Safety that the building requires Division 88 improvements. I started getting bids from different contractors for the job, and they required $150,000. I approached many different banks for construction work, and they all turned it down for lack of income of the property. Finally, the city tore the building down. I'm sorry that it's been my responsibility and cost. Soon after the work was done, I went to the city and asked for the Department of Building and Safety that they were very nice and cordial, and they gave me a final bid. The final bid that I received, there were several incremental bills, and the final bill that we've been receiving was $32,270.38. I approached different people for financing, and finally she instructed me to find if someone can finance the amount owed to the city, the $32,270. I approached Mr. Zern, who is here today, and Mr. Zern, Mr. Stanley Zern is also a client of mine, and he would pay for the city based on $32,000 that he would get a first lien on the property.
Yes, I would do that.
Then I have found a gentleman who is going to make a used car sales lot out of the property. I've had several meetings with
Time's up in 30 seconds.
Ms. Campbell, and we're pleading with the city that they would take the $32,000 that I've been getting bills for the past 2 years.
Okay, thank you very much. We appreciate your testimony. Thank you. We will hear now from council members, starting with Council Member Jan Perry.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. I would like to make a verbal motion based upon a recommendation from the Department of Building and Safety to waive 40% of the assessment charge due to the fact that the assessment is higher than the land value. It's in the best interest of the city and the community to resolve this matter and to ensure that the lot is not left vacant and unattended. So my motion is to waive 40% of the assessment charge in this specific case.
Okay, we have the motion before us if there's no objection. Anybody else wishing to be heard on this? Seeing none, if you'll please open the roll, Madam Clerk. Please close the roll and tabulate the vote.
15 ayes.
That is approved as amended. Thank you very much. Appreciate you coming down. Next item, please.
Item number 13 was called special by Councilmember Labange.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'd like to ask Mr. Deaton to come to the center table just to give us a brief update. We're having great success in renovation of the historic Griffith Observatory. And
Will you just
for,
press your speaker button? I'll pause it. Thank you.
Do I have to repeat everything I said since I didn't press my button?
No, the record will reflect
Mr.
it.
Deaton, just a brief little update. Thanks.
We're in the midst of renovation. It'd be kind of interesting for anybody to like to go up and take a look, but we've gone through and removed all the innards of the observatory and the process of doing some structural changes, adding the new planetarium show area, shored up the land, etc., and redoing it from the bottom up. It's kind of exciting. It has not been renovated since its construction many years ago, and all reports that I have from the Bureau of Engineering, it's on schedule and on budget at this point, and I think in a year or year plus, a couple of years, we'll be ready to reopen.
Thank you, Mr. Deaton. Members, I just called this special because I want to let you know things are working in this direction for the observatory, and as Dr. Ed Krupp and friends of the observatory work hard, the Bureau of Engineering is doing a great job on this, as well as those who we've consulted and contracted with. I asked for an aye vote, but I wanted to let you know it's moving forward in the right direction that we'll all could be proud of, the renovation of the historic Griffith Observatory.
Thank you very much, Mr. Labange. If we can please open the roll on the item, close the roll and tabulate the vote.
15 ayes.
That item is approved. Next item, please.
Item number 15 was called special for Councilmember Gruhl.
Councilmember Gruhl, should we hold that on the table momentarily? Why don't we go to the next item?
Item number 26 was called special by Councilmember Labange.
Mr. Labange, item 26.
Receive and file A and approve B for this particular matter here. This is another historic building in Griffith Park, the great Griffith Park's venue called the Greek Theater, which just had its last concert this last weekend, where they've totally now moved out of it and they're starting to renovation and move forward. So I just want to let you know that is progress, and it will be open in the next spring, in the early summer for another season. I ask for an aye vote on this matter with those amendments, Mr. President. You have that correct, Mr. Clerk?
Yes, actually, yeah. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you very much. So we are noting and filing A, and you're moving B?
Yeah, that would be receiving and filing the Arts, Parks, Health Committee report and adopting budget and finance.
Okay, we have the Budget and Finance report before us, colleagues. Anybody else wishing to be heard? Seeing none, Madam Clerk, please open the roll. Please close the roll and tabulate the vote.
15 ayes.
Okay, thank you very much. That item is approved. Let's go back to item, is 26?
Item 15.
15, sorry. Item 15 is before us. Councilmember Gruhl.
Thank you very much, Mr. Garcetti. Before you today is an audit of the Office of Finance. We often forget the critical role that our Office of Finance plays in our city, and particularly last year, the office collected approximately $2 billion in revenue for the city of Los Angeles. That's nearly half the city's entire budget. The audit identifies a number of areas of improvement where the Office of Finance can streamline their processes and improve coordination so that we can further enhance our collection efforts. And in a year when we are having a tight budget, we need to look at all of the individuals who owe those back taxes and to work with the Office of Finance to ensure that we can collect. That will help us put police, fire officials on the streets, as well as some basic city services. I've asked for a number of report backs on the items, and as I said before, I'm making sure that recommendations that the controller puts forward that don't just sit on the shelf, that our departments come back and actually implement those recommendations, and this is one department that can help us actually bring additional revenue. We must change the way we do business by implementing smart, common sense reforms. We can save the city money, freeing up scarce resources and targeting that to our community's needs. So I look forward to sharing with you in the future some of those additional changes that are going to be made by the Office of Finance. So just wanted to highlight that for my colleagues, that we are taking seriously audits that are conducted by our controller and other government efficiencies that are going to help us in the city of Los Angeles become a much more efficient city. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you very much. Mr. Reyes.
Just want to ask my colleague, Councilman Gruhl, if you put 5 departments, well, let's say there were 6 or 7 that we knew was generate revenues. Do you have that flexibility in your approach in dealing with this issue?
I'm sorry, say that again. If
we have 6 or 7, or there are 3 departments after the 5 that also generate revenue, are we allowing for flexibility to deal with those departments, or are you going to just have a hard line at 5?
No, we're dealing with those departments as well.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Reyes. All right, seeing no other colleagues wishing to be heard, if you'll please open the roll on the item, close the roll and tabulate the vote.
15 ayes.
That item is approved. Thank you very much. Next item, please.
Item number 29, call special by Councilmember Reyes.
Councilmember Reyes, item 29.
Thank you, Council President. I call this item special because I wanted to share with my colleagues the hard work that's been achieved by the Planning Department. It's a great example of how we are looking at rezoning and reestablishing underused industrial zones so that we can take advantage of our rail stations, and how we are literally bringing back to life underused properties so they may become much more functional, a greater asset for the area, and that now we can build housing on top of commercial next to a rail station. But just as important is that we now have a different way of looking at our space, and in times of budget crunches, start assessing how we look at our properties and our districts so they can become revenue generators. Again, in the theme of getting that pie to become bigger so we can minimize the level of cutbacks and of our programs and personnel, we need to become more aggressive in how we approach this. So I just want to take this time to thank the Planning Department and Mr. Roush, who worked really hard on this project, and I ask for a unanimous vote on this item. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Reyes. Anybody else wishing to be heard on the item? Seeing none, Madam Clerk, if you'll please open the roll. Please close the roll and tabulate the vote.
15 ayes.
That item is approved, colleagues. Thank you very much. Next item.
Item 44, call special by Councilmember Reyes.
Councilmember Reyes, you're back on.
Thank you, Council President. On this, it's more of a technical change on this item, in which the motion should read for the Veterans Day Remembrance event, that the event would be held on Cypress Avenue between Pepper and Idell Street, not on Marmion Way between West Avenue 45 and Shanley Avenue. And colleagues, now that I have a moment, this is a Veterans Day Memorial we're having in Cypress Park. As you know, many of the veterans that came back from Vietnam did not get the homecoming that they deserved. And in this particular area of the city, in Cypress Park, Northeast, many of the Chicana soldiers, men and women in uniform, came back to basically nothing. So the community veterans, together with the community leaders and our office, we put together a memorial on an intersection, on an island that was once blighted. It's now become landscape with flagpoles. It was a tremendous event. When we had the grand opening, we had actually the Aztec Flyers jump out of a plane, landed right there in the neighborhood. The kids were just excited to see heroes of their older brothers, their uncles, those that came back from Vietnam that gave of themselves for their country. So from a technical amendment, I took advantage of this time to express the good things that are happening for our veterans. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Reyes. As the grandson of one of those Chicano fighters in World War II came back to Los Angeles. Thank you for your efforts and your activism. Seeing no other colleagues wishing to be heard, if we can open the roll on the item, close the roll and tabulate the vote. That item
15 ayes.
is approved. Thank you very much. Next item, please.
Item number 50 was called special by Councilmember Labange.
Councilmember Labange. Item 50 is before us, Mr. Labange.
Would you hold on the table, please? I'm trying to correct the motion on it.
You got it. We'll hold that on the table. We can go to the next item, please.
Item number 53 was called special by Councilmember Villaraigosa, and there is an amending motion that I believe is it's a resolution that's in the process of being distributed.
Okay. Mr. Villaraigosa, would you like us to wait till that's distributed?
I did it for Weiss.
Okay. Mr. Weiss.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. Thank you, Mr. Villaraigosa, for making that technical change for me. As many of you know, we have a problem in our nation when it comes to interoperability between our police departments and our fire departments, our emergency responders. They're not on the same frequency, literally, around the country. And there are some folks in Washington who are trying to do something about it, and we should be particularly proud that one of the leaders is our home state senator, Dianne Feinstein. But she really needs our help. The Senate, not entirely, but much at her urging, has put, it's $140 million for the Interoperable Communications Technology Program in a bill in the Senate Commerce, Justice, State Appropriations Bill for this coming year, and the House hasn't put that in there. So they're going to be in conference in the next week or two. We've been in touch with Senator Feinstein's office. They wanted to know how the city of LA feels about this, and I want to be able to respond to them very clearly that the city of Los Angeles thinks this is important legislation. This is an important item to be funded. So I'd ask for your aye vote. I'd ask for your support so we can let the Senate know that the second largest city in the country wants the House and the Senate to come together and fund interoperable communications for police and fire. It's not just for terrorism. It also helps in the event you have extraordinary natural catastrophes, as we've seen here in the past few weeks. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you very much, Mr. Weiss. Thank you for your leadership on this. Mr. Zine.
Yes, I want to thank Councilmember Weiss for bringing this to our attention. It's interesting, the National League of Cities has been taking this issue up, and it's been an issue for the last 10 years. This is a problem affecting law enforcement across the country, and for 10 years they've been trying to sort the mess out, and it's about time that we find the appropriations to make it happen. So for our public safety personnel, both police and fire, urge that we support this legislation, and this $140 million is basically the beginning, because if you look at all the departments across the country, it's going to take much more than that to sort this out. But as technology changes, it seems that public safety has been left at the end of the train where it needs to be at the beginning of the train, and this is the beginning to make that come to fruition, where the public safety personnel will have that operability that they need to provide safety for the people of not only Los Angeles, but people of America. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Zine. Anybody else wishing to be heard on this? If not, Madam Clerk, if you please open the roll, close the roll, and tabulate the vote.
15 ayes.
That item is approved. Mr. Labange, are you ready for the previous one? Okay, let's return to item 50. Okay, item 50, the amendment's been circulated. Mr. Labange, microphone's yours.
Correction on a miscommunication I had with the event, but it's been corrected.
Oh, that's the one I just signed. Gotcha. Okay. If we can open the roll on that as amended, close the roll, and tabulate the vote.
15 ayes.
Great. Thank you very much. That is approved. Next. Thank you, Mr. Labange. Next item, please.
Item number 57, call special for a card from the public. It's a parcel map in Council District 11.
Okay. This time I'd like to invite Henry Wilson forward to give public testimony on item 57. Is Mr. Wilson in the room? Mr. Henry Wilson? Okay, he seems to have left, so why don't we enter his name into the record? Anybody wishing to be heard on the item? If not, seeing none, let's open the roll on the item. Please close the roll and tabulate the vote.
15 ayes.
That item is approved. Next item, please.
Item number 59, called special by Councilmember Misakowski.
All right. Councilmember Misakowski.
Thank you, Mr. President. Members, this is the burglar alarm issue that we thought we had dealt with. On Friday, the council agreed to bring in the motion, allow the motion, Rule 23, to come in, considering the action of the Police Commission, and I said we would continue it until today, where we would have had a committee meeting yesterday. Members, at that committee meeting yesterday, we were told that although training has occurred and the automated telephone operators who handle these calls, not the 911 calls, when they come in on 911, they get transferred over to an automated telephone operator, that there is a system in place today where they can track the burglar alarms. However, come spring, when the X system, which was Prop M, which was a $235 million system that the voters voted to approve, got us our new dispatch centers, got us the center in the valley, got the new equipment, got a whole new network. That system cannot handle, as presently configured, false alarms. To do that, ITA told us it would take $400,000 additional to upgrade that system, and it would take, that system's ready to go into operation in the spring. That system, to upgrade it after we come up with $400,000, could be functional in a year later, in spring or later of 2005. There has been no accommodation for the cost recovery of that system. Yet the council said, when we adopted the new burglar alarm system, that the response, the false alarms, the permits, the processing, the necessary requirements to make this all work the way the new policy was put into effect should be borne by the users. The users are those who have permits installed, and in some instances are the false alarm calls that we go out, we have to track, we then have to bill. We had asked for a cost recovery analysis to be done by the police department and its commission staff, and that has not yet been done. We did get an interim report yesterday saying that it is being put together, but it still hasn't been reviewed by the CAO-CLA. We had an ordinance pending. The ordinance was drafted by the city attorney to again implement this policy. That ordinance hasn't been adopted. We had the alarm industry who indicated they would cooperate with us, and according to Mr. Deaton, they are cooperating. There is an agreement. The confidentiality agreement is signed, and when we ask officially, the lists of who and where permits have been, alarms have been installed with or without permits will be provided to us. We need to track it and correlate it. Members, we were told yesterday in committee that although the Commission had asked that this policy go into effect last Saturday, we were told that it hadn't gone into effect, it was suspended while we look at this, and we were also told in committee that the policy that the Council wanted, the understanding of what the Mayor had asked the Commission to do, had it gone into effect on the November 1st, it would not work. It would not work the way we wanted. Now, that doesn't mean it can't work, and that doesn't mean we don't need to upgrade the systems. In fact, I asked Mr. Deaton yesterday that the burglar alarm task force had done its job. We had industry, we had community, we had citizens. We came up with this policy, and then the Commission changed it somewhat, but still altered what made sense. But the city agencies haven't talked together, haven't implemented what they need to implement to make it work. So this policy is not ready to go into effect, and so that's why my request today would be to assert the jurisdiction until we get agreement from the Police Commission that they will not implement this policy for about 60 days. We asked Mr. Deaton to report back to us in 30 days as to the implementation, the cost, bring in the fee ordinance so that this can all work together the way it should work. We can't have the department going and doing one thing and all the other pieces not together. And we can't have the department doing something that can be tracked from now until the end of the year. And I forgot a point. This $400,000 is the cost to bring our new system, the X system, our $275 million system, up to date to be able to do this function. It cannot now, it is not configured to do it now. So what are we going to do in the interim between our new system going into effect after the first of the year and 2005 when we come up with $400,000 to implement it? We're going to come up with a, excuse the expression, jerry-rigged system that's going to bring laptops to our telephone operators. When the calls come in on an X system, they're going to also, that's going to be on the new system, the new computers, the new processing data. They're going to go to the laptop, which is going to hook up to the old system, which we're still going to keep in place so they can track whether a false alarm is the second alarm or third alarm or they need to dispatch. That is the system that was explained to us yesterday. We have our communications people from LAPD. I believe we have ITA here as well. We need to know what we're doing. We need to know what we're asking our employees to do, and we need to know the consequences of this. Those laptops are going to cost money too. That's about $50,000. That hasn't been accounted for. Again, the principle on this was that all costs be recovered by the users, by the alarm, the people who have alarms, and the people who are installing them. That is not now in place. It needs to be in place. If not, there is that cost. That cost exists. It's real. We know it. And if we don't come up with cost recovery, it's the general fund. It's that general fund that we've heard from our CAO and CLA is in very, very precarious positions. And we said, when we had the budget report here, we've got to go to zero-based budgeting, and we've got to raise the fees from the people who are receiving the benefits to cover the costs. That's clearly what we said on this. It's not ready. So my recommendation is that we assert jurisdiction until we hear, and again, continue this for 20 days, something about, I guess, November 17th or 18th would be the date, to see if we've heard back from the Commission that they agree to not implement this policy for 60 days until these steps that we've talked about, including public education. Somebody came up yesterday and said, oh, we don't need public education. People have been reading the papers. They understand. They don't understand. If they read the papers, they realize it's chaotic. We need a real, honest public education system to let the users know, the alarm permittees, what the benefits are, what the costs are, and what their responsibilities are. And that's not in place yet. We need 60 days to get that in place so the city's network of systems, network of people, network of agencies are on the same page, come back to the council so that our users, the citizens who benefit from this, understand what their responsibilities are as well.
Thank you, Ms. Misakowski. Mr. Weiss.
Thank you, Mr. President. Colleagues, Ms. Misakowski and I represent districts that are relatively high in the number of private burglar alarms and relatively, by the standards of the rest of the city, low in violent crime. And I join her in making this motion today because I want a police department that can maximize our ability to provide public safety to those parts of town that are relatively low in the number of burglar alarms, but relatively high in the amount of violent crime. As Mr. Reyes knows, as he just pushed his button, it's about equity and fairness and putting our resources where the criminals are putting their bullets. I'd like to ask Mr. Deaton to please come to the table and hold my time, please. Mr. Deaton, you made a very good presentation yesterday in committee. I'd like you to take as much time as you need to tell us why you think going forward with this policy now is a mistake for the city.
Well, the policy of two false alarms and then not responding it comes in, at least in part, from the task force that the council asked me to chair. And the essence of that proposal, or that compromise proposal, was that there would be an education process in which people who have false alarms would be notified. There would be an escalating cost for that, and they would understand that at some point after 2 or 3 false alarms that we would no longer respond. I believe the system is in place at this point fails to provide the education and the feedback necessary for people to understand that false alarms will have consequences, both to the police department and to them personally. And secondly, I think the billing system and the integration of the information does not permit a way of cleanly providing the system. Hence,
what I was going to do is
this is how much more time I have.
No. I wanted to take you through those points.
Okay.
Start by talking about the permits and billing problems.
Well, in the process, in the task force, we don't bill for everything that we should. We are unclear on the number of people who do or do not have permits, and there's, I think, a lost revenue as a result of that. But also, there is not a clear understanding of who has a permit, and when we respond, the correct address, that we're making sure that there is a connection between the person who has the alarm and actually where the false alarm is. And that whole connection, there is a need both from a operational standpoint in order to make this compromise work, and also from a legal standpoint to allow us to do the things that we need to do, that be an accurate situation, and I don't think there's been adequate testing to ensure that.
You also made points yesterday. Your words were something effective: don't implement a system unless we're sure we can maintain it and keep it operating, having to do with the laptop issue. Can you expand on that here?
Well, information and that was presented yesterday is that that currently we have a 911 system or dispatch system, a legacy system that has been altered to provide for on the screen when before somebody dispatches for a false alarm, the number of false alarms, for a burglar alarm, the number of false alarms that particular address has had would come up on the screen. In a few months, we'll be implementing a new system, which, according to testimony yesterday, it'll be some 19 months before we'd be able to provide that same information on the screen. Not going into the accuracy of what comes up on the screen, but just the fact that it can't go up on the screen for 19 months. What was being suggested yesterday is that in addition to the screen of the new system, that the particular operator that handles these kinds of calls would also have a laptop that they would enter the address and provide the information. I'm not saying that won't work. It was the first I had heard about that being the solution. I think it's important that we know that once the legacy system has been replaced, the system that will be in place subsequent to that time can in fact do what we need it to do and provide the information and provide the accuracy that we need, and for it to be both legal and operationally sound.
Thank you, Mr. Deaton. Colleagues, Mr. Ludlow, this morning I went for my run around UCLA, and I ran into a couple police officers who had just finished ticketing someone for running a red light. And I asked the officers in the car, I said, tell me about the burglar alarm issues. You ever found a bad guy? And the two cops in the car, adding up the 12 years of experience that their training officer had, you're up to about 20 years of experience. They said you could count on one hand the number of times any of the three of them had ever come upon an actual criminal as a result of the LAPD's current policy of responding to burglar alarms. The current system that people want to save doesn't make any of us any safer. And the computer system that was described yesterday in committee, it reminds me of that DeLorean that Christopher Lloyd was working up in Back to the Future. It is a contraption. And with a contraption like that, folks, you can get stuck in the future. And even worse, you can get stuck in the past. And we are headed down the same path Christopher Lloyd was headed down with the DeLorean that they're planning on implementing if we don't pass this motion today. Add on top of that the tight economic times we have. I don't see why we would be willing to leave any dollars on the table right now and throw good public safety dollars after bad. I urge an aye vote. Let's take jurisdiction over this. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr. Weiss. I have Ms. Gruhl next, followed by Mr. Reyes, Mr. Parks, Ms. Hahn, Mr. Smith, Mr. Zine, and Ms. Miskowski again.
I think that means me. Next. Colleagues, we are not here to reopen, I don't think, to debate the policy. This is the fourth, fifth, I don't know how many times we've talked about this policy of what we want to have happen on false alarms. We've had a task force, we've had a commission, we've had this council, we've had neighborhood councils talk about what our policy should be. That being said, I understand that there are challenges in their implementation, that Ms. Miskowski and Mr. Weiss have brought up some good issues. Ms. Hahn and I agree with many of those implementation challenges, as does Mr. Deaton. But we do not need to 245 this issue to resolve those. If you may recall, when we were here debating this issue in the first place, when Ms. Hahn and I actually recommended that we prop 245 because the police commission was going to implement this without public input. Many of my colleagues who are arguing differently today said, no, 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 we don't need to 245 it. The police commission is going to work with us in a task force, and the 245 failed. But in fact, during that process, there was a good task force that came back with some solid recommendations. Mr. Deaton, we do not need a 245 this issue to be able to address the implementation. Is that correct?
So long as the police commission agrees to postpone for, say, 60 days any action on the special order, which I think would be
Before my time
inappropriate.
is up, we'll ask the police department to do that, the police commission. Secondly, you are not recommending that we go back to either the policy of responding to all alarms or responding to no alarms. Is that correct?
No, I still support the recommendation that I had previously, which is either the 2 or the 3 false alarms, given that the implementation is as we outlined in the task force report. And just for the record, this does not remind me of Back to the Future. It reminds me of Groundhog Day.
I wish I had thought of that, Ron. I would have used that. So again, I just want to say this again, colleagues, we are not arguing, or we should not be re-debating the issue of whether or not we are responding to false alarms. And Mr. Weiss, I have spoken to police officers in my area who similarly can count and say that they have not necessarily encountered a bad guy. But the reason they haven't encountered a bad guy is because the bad guys know that the police are going to come at some point. It may be 10 minutes, it may be 2 hours, whatever it's going to be, but there is an understanding in the city that when an alarm goes off, a police officer is going to come. They may be around the corner and be able to respond quickly. So we can talk about what a burglar has in his mind or not in his mind, but the fact is that if we are going to respond to an alarm, we are sending out a message that we are going to protect our citizenry. We can do this. We came up with a compromise that said we're going to raise fees at some point to cover costs that will take care of the fact that we have a number of individuals who are not paying their alarm fees. We can cover the costs if we need to look at the computers. I do have a question, Mr. Deaton, and maybe again the Police Commission to respond, which is how did we design a system that did not include the capacity to do this, since we have been supposedly billing for false alarms in the past, and secondly, 19 months to make a change, and are we sure that it will be implemented? Sorry, I don't know your name, or I would ask you to come up. Are we sure that it's actually going to be implemented in January to that case? And hold my last 35 seconds if we could.
Jeff Jantz, Commanding Officer and Director of Systems, LAPD X Division.
Great.
I'm responsible for the DeLorean.
Okay, good.
I believe the first question was, why was it not included in the original? We've been in negotiations with Northrop Grumman and Print Track since December of 2001. That's the point in time that the requirements were locked down. So this was never on the horizon or on the radar at that point in time. So it's subsequent to this contract signing that we've come back now and talked to them about this capability.
But I guess the question is, we were at the time billing for false alarms in 2001, correct?
Yes.
And so my assumption would be that the new system would allow you to bill for false alarms, because at that time we didn't, know we were going to have this debate every week.
In the current system, as it's contracted now, independent of the two-alarm false alarm policy, we've taken all the requirements of the previous legacy CAD system, including all the billing aspects of it, and incorporated that into the new Print Track system. So none of that is being lost. All the billing processes will stay the same and continue on.
Including the false alarm ability to identify a false alarm so you can bill?
The last piece, the two false alarm policy piece is the piece that we've now gone back to Print Track for and received an additional quote for them to incorporate that into the software package. So no, the answer to that question is no. The two alarm policy portion of it is yet to be implemented. That's what we're.
And the 19-month was the other question.
We're going to go live with the Print Track software solution next April 25th of 2004. The period of time that the Print Track system comes up, the new
My
system
timer's
comes
still
up.
on, sorry.
And until we have this false alarm solution is approximately 19 months to 24 months, somewhere in that time frame.
I think the problem, we're at the final stages of implementing a new dispatch system, to have a fix come in at this point and then try to implement that on the same schedule is problematic. I think what they're going to do is do the software, go through probably a year of making sure that the system works, and then make the software change. I think the 19 months, I don't think this is a 19th-month development issue. It's more of a making sure that the system stays stable, that it's a stable system, since it's such a high profile issue, making sure that we are able to dispatch both police and fire. This is the first call for all that, to make sure that's stabilized before we make any changes. And so it's not a 19, I didn't get the feeling yesterday that it was a 19-month development, but it was 19 months before we would be willing to take the chance of implementing changes. And I'm sure at that point there'll be other changes, other fixes along the way. So they can correct me if I'm wrong, but.
And how many people within the department respond to, if I know there's a laptop solution and so forth, but if that would have to use the current computer with a laptop when a false alarm?
I'll defer to Captain Smith from Communications Division.
Hi, I am Captain Andy Smith from Communications Division. I'm the commanding officer. Typically, we have 4 ATO, which are auxiliary telephone operators, working in the Metro Dispatch Center here, and then 1 or 2 working in the Valley Dispatch Center. Generally, we don't have more than 8 on at any one particular time. And those ATOs, the auxiliary telephone operators, are the folks that get the alarm calls from the burglar alarm companies. And if a call happens to come in through 911 because someone hears an alarm going off in their neighbor's house, they call 911, that phone call will get transferred over to the ATO, the auxiliary telephone operator. So we need probably about a maximum of about 8 at any given time.
Okay, so 8 individuals that will be responding to that. And I guess my last question would be, and I'm not sure you all could answer this, which is if the police commission is willing to suspend implementation for the 30 or 60 days as indicated, was requested by the council today. Did you hear that, Ron, that they were willing to do that?
I have not talked to the commission, but I
Do we have
can't
representatives?
imagine they wouldn't.
Ms. Groh.
Right now, but I understand someone from the commission is going to come over.
Okay. Again, this is deja vu as Groundhog Day, which was they came over, Rick Caruso said, I agree to hold off. This is, again, not about the policy of whether we should respond to alarms or not. We've had that debate again and again and again. I share my colleagues' concern about responding to urgent calls. We've had that discussion that the LAPD will still do that. They will still have this as a low priority. But we do not want to send a message to the individuals out there who would challenge and go and steal from our homes that we're never going to respond to those alarms. So I just want to make that clear again. Thank you, Mr. President.
Mr. Reyes.
Thank you, Council President. First, I want to thank my colleagues who are able to put into perspective what we're really trying to do here. And it really is about how we deal with safety, priorities, and the limited resources, and where the highest crimes are occurring, and where there is no support. And I think that's a good statement to make about one city, and I think that's an important statement. Doesn't mean any one crime is less or another. It's just talking about hard decisions you have to make with priorities. But second, I think most important is we need to understand cost recovery. What does it mean? We do not have that detail. We do not understand. I mean, yesterday I found out that the state controls alarm companies. That I was trying to figure out, why is it convenient for the alarm companies to have address and location and be very efficient about it? When it comes to the city collecting the bills, we don't know who to go to collect for the bills. I thought there was a relationship here that the alarm companies should accommodate, if not provide that kind of information. Then I find out, well, the city can't do that. That's a state regulatory issue. So maybe perhaps we need state legislators to help us craft that kind of language. Again, that's a whole other discussion. But bottom line is, the commission can give us the 60 days to suspend this. If we can get to the hard questions of cost recovery and understand the process and what it takes to get to the priorities the council has already set, and you're right, Councilor McGrew, we don't need to go through that debate again. This is about understanding where we're going and making sure that the council's direction is being adhered to and that we're actually complying with the advice of our CLA and those that are involved with the mechanisms and all the mechanics of this process. So I think there's too many open-ended questions that have yet to be answered. We haven't got the answers on cost recovery, and we haven't been able to get that commitment from the commission until they come down and say they will do that. I'm willing to support the 245.
Mr. Parks.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I was going to ask Captain Smith, would you give us an overview of how burglar alarms are dispatched and what's the response from the unit and how it's coded?
Yes, sir. Currently what happens is a call will come in, generally from a burglar alarm company, that they have a burglar alarm that's activated at a particular address. That call will be either directly to the ATO, the auxiliary telephone operator, or it'll be come in on a 911 line, and as I mentioned earlier, it'll get transferred over to the auxiliary telephone operator. What they'll do is they'll type up the comments of the call and create an incident for it. That incident will get transferred over to the RTO, which is the radio telephone operator. That radio telephone operator will put out a broadcast, for example, any Newton unit, code 30, and give the address, unless the radio is really busy. If the radio is really busy and there's a unit available, they'll assign that directly to a unit as a low priority call.
Okay, so when you say they go over the air with any units available, that is an indication that the officers only accept that call if they're available. They are the ones that accept the call.
Yes, sir. In that case, if they broadcast for any available Newton unit, any unit that's clear, or if somebody happens to be very close, they'll say, hey, I'll pick up that call, give their unit designation, pick up that call.
Do you find that there's a large rate of crossover in handling the calls like that? Do units from other parts of the city jump on a Newton call if they hear a burglar alarm, or do they pretty much get handled by the Newton units?
Generally, the Newton units will handle those burglar alarm calls unless they've grown to be so old that they have to assign it to someone else.
Okay. So the issue is that if we're talking about deployment of units and call load, it's not a directed call much as a priority call directed to a unit that will force them to go at that time.
Correct. Usually a code 30 will sit on an officer's screen on his MDT in the car. It'll sit on the officer's screen and it'll be handled as a lower priority call. And generally we don't have units from other parts of the city coming into Newton, for example, to handle those calls.
And they carry radios on their belt and in their car, so if they're away from the car, they can monitor other important broadcasts?
Yes, sir.
Okay. One of the things I think is important, colleagues, is that when we hear the story about units being taken from more important calls, I think that's misinformation. I think if we also hear misinformation, if we believe that one police officer or one unit is going to be moved from one part of the city to another because of the response of burglar calls, that is not going to happen. So I think it's misinformation to believe that people are their time is being wasted, particularly when the officer has to request the call once it's put out, or else it's put in what we call a receive and file. And so therefore it's broadcast, the officer must accept it. So when we talk about this, it should not be of great concern if one of our units are patrolling and they're alerted to a burglar call and they drive by it, they're not being dispatched from the station, is that right?
That's correct.
Okay, so they're out in the field listening to their radio. And so the concern, I think, when we talk about this, to give any impression to the community that people are being shifted or there's large groups of police officers going to be moved from one part of the city because of the absence of burglar alarms, is that an appropriate consideration? Are we going to be shifting people? Can we determine from the workload of officers that the call load on burglar alarms is going to make a massive shift of personnel?
No, the shifts generally are for coded calls that start to get timed out. The emergency calls where there's no units in Newton available, then someone from Southwest will be assigned. It'll be an emergency call, generally not a
And give us an example of a coded call.
A coded call would be a robbery in progress, ADW, assault with a deadly weapon in progress. Those would be coded calls. When those get to a certain age, then when they've been sitting in the queue, in the RTO's queue on her screen, waiting for those to be dispatched, after they get a certain period of time old, those calls will get assigned to an outside unit, either from another division within the Bureau or even another Bureau. And that's where we get the crossover, where units come from another part of the city into, for example, Newton Division to handle a call.
So if we have a burglary or robbery call, or a robbery or a homicide or a coded call, will they ever go below the priority of a burglar call?
No, sir.
Okay, so a burglar call will just stay in the queue until these more important calls are handled.
Yes, sir.
We do not have instances where murders are going uninvestigated because of a burglar call?
No, sir.
Okay. The one thing, colleagues, I think it's important as we look at this issue that we think about the factual circumstances. Mr. Weiss, I think it's important, where's Mr. Weiss? It's important as we do that empirical study with that police officer about whether they can remember making an arrest. Having been there for a little bit of time, I think if you carried over that logic, you'd find that most calls that officers respond to don't result in arrests, whether they are burglars or not. And most calls into the communication center doesn't result in an arrest. So we could pretty much eliminate most of the police department's workload if we followed the logic of that officer, because we wouldn't have to respond to any of these radio calls, and we wouldn't have to respond to any of these dispatch calls, because most of them don't end up in a result of an arrest. Because officers only are averaging, if I'm not mistaken, maybe 8 to 10 arrests per month. And so their whole work day of 18 to 20 days a month, they do not make an arrest every day. And most of the calls that they respond to people's residences don't result in an arrest, and many times do not result in a report. And so these are things I think we have to realize factually what officers do, what we require them to do, and I think it's important that we not mislead the public to believe that there's large cadre of officers that's going to be shifted to the more violent parts of the city because we're not handling burglar calls on the west side or the north part of the city.
Thank you.
Mr. Parks, I just want to say I respect your position on this, and I know that it comes with a great deal of experience under your belt, but it was when you had a lot of experience under your belt that you first alerted me to the problem with the LAPD policy, and the very first person who gave me my tutorial in why the policy had to be changed was you.
You weren't listening.
Thank you.
You weren't listening, but the issue is what I gave you a lesson on was that we reduced the response on non-verified alarms.
No, I was listening. I was listening.
We'll have a tutorial after school today. Ms. Hahn.
We'll have to give you another lesson.
Ms. Hahn.
We have a new rule here on the council floor that anybody can just get up and kind of respond. I didn't know we changed our rules. I know, it's like the one you like to watch. Okay, Mr. Deaton, I think you said it exactly right when you compared this to the movie The Groundhog Day. It seems like we're going to keep doing this until we get it right. And I, for one, will say I agree with Councilwoman Gruhl that we are not debating the policy here today, colleagues. We have done that. We have debated this policy. As you know, when the 245 failed last time, the Police Commission agreed to delay the implementation of their non-response policy for 60 days, and it was during that time that we convened the Citizens Task Force. It was made up of each of us were allowed to appoint 2 people to that commission. It was made up of neighborhood councils, and they came back with a set of recommendations that this council unanimously supported. In fact, many of us stood up and said things like, this was the most well thought out policy, it was better than what we had before, they thought of things that nobody thought of before, it was really a good policy, it was a good compromise policy. What we have before us today is, are we ready to implement that policy? And if you'll hold my time, I would like to ask Mr. Jantz or Andy, can I call you Andy? Sure. Captain Smith, a little bit about this system, and because much has been made today of this idea of $400,000 to upgrade a $12 million system to be able to track false alarms. Is it true that the agreement with this vendor actually sort of allowed for upgrades or demanded that we buy 3 upgrades? Or can you explain to me what we negotiated with this $12 million computer system?
The cost of the alarm proposal is $145,000. One of the advantages of going with what we refer to as a COTS product, commercial off the shelf, which is what the Print Track package is, one of the advantages of that is that you're allowed to procure on a yearly basis upgraded software, enhancements that come along that the manufacturer puts into the product. We have always expected, and it's my intention, that those yearly budgeted costs for upgrades would be included as part of a normal budget cycle.
So if it wasn't for this burglar alarm, to continue on my time, if it wasn't for this burglar alarm update, would we be updating this system anyway?
Yes. Yes, the cost associated with those upgrades, we're on version 6.6 will be what we'll implement. We hopefully will purchase version 6.7, version 6.8, and version 6.9. That's an independent cost of the false alarm proposal, which is $145,000. If you add those 3 yearly upgrades plus the $145,000, that's where you get the $400,000 cost.
So colleagues, that is very clear. It is not $400,000 that the general fund will have to support to upgrade this to allow us to track false alarms. We're going to upgrade that system 3 times anyway. And so I think that's what we need to hear. And whether or not we want to put that on the backs of alarm users is other idea. I don't think we do, because it sounds like we're upgrading that system anyway, and that's a cost that we agreed to incur. Let me hold my time again. Mr. Smith, could you, Captain Smith, another big deal was made this morning. My time is going while you're holding it while, okay.
Ms. Hahn, hold the time when they're responding to your question.
Okay, another big deal was made about this interim, DeLorean, I've heard it called hokey, I've heard the word pathetic, in between the time where the current system, which can track false alarms, and this new system takes place. Can you explain again one more time how that's going to work, and indeed if you would consider it hokey or pathetic or DeLorean-like?
Well, this was the first, my understanding, this is the first attempt at an interim solution, and they're obviously looking at other solutions that may be possible. But right now what's going to happen is on our ATO's console, there's 4 screens, and they have a desk similar to this. They'll put a laptop next to the 4 screens that our auxiliary telephone operators have. That laptop will be on, and it'll have software that will be upgraded from the legacy CAD system, so that if a PSR gets a burglar alarm call on a particular address from a burglar alarm company, that'll show up on their screen on one of their 4 main screens. Then they'll type in that address into this burglar alarm database that's on the laptop computer. If that comes up with a hit or 2 hits, then they'll adjust their broadcast policy accordingly. So if it's the first time that it's an alarm at that location, we'll dispatch as we do right now. Second time, no problem. But if they've already had 2 false alarms, it'll show up on the screen, false alarm, excessive false alarms as of the date, and then our PSRs, our dispatchers, will broadcast any Newton unit, code 30 at this location, to burglar alarm at that location. And they'll wait a few moments after they've given the officers that are in the area an opportunity to respond. They'll just file it away and they won't respond to it.
And our officers are ready to.
Ma'am, our folks are trained. I've got a communications divisional order drafted, and all I have to do is change the date on here for whenever we get directed to implement it. We are ready to go. Our officers have been trained, our PSRs have been trained, and we're ready to go.
Thank you. If I could just have a tad more time. It sounds like we're ready to implement this policy. But what I will agree with some of my colleagues on, I am disappointed in the police department and the police commission, because frankly they have not taken the recommendations of the task force, whether it be to tell the alarm companies that you cannot install alarm in the city until the user has a permit. We have not notified alarm users that this policy is going into place. We have not notified alarm users that their fees might double or triple in terms of their false alarms. So on that angle, I would be in favor of asking the police commission to delay implementation for 30 or 60 days until those things are panned out. But I think it was not accurate to say that this is going to cost the city $400,000 or that we cannot accommodate this period between the current system and the new system. But colleagues, I don't think we need to 245 this today. We can work with the police commission. They can delay this until the communication with the users, the people in Los Angeles, that's what I'm concerned about.
Mr. Smith.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. Dean, please. First of all, I think Ms. Hahn and Ms. Gruhl really summarized this case very well. We've been down this road many times. There's a lot of things wrong with the implementation, but there are patches that can be applied to fix it in the interim. Is that correct?
I think we
it
can
may
make
not
the
be the
system-
most efficient way, but we can fix this up and make this turkey look a little better for the short term at
Look
least.
more like an eagle, a soaring
Okay.
eagle.
And eventually it will become an eagle. That's the important part. And I want to thank Councilman Parks for really clarifying we're not taking resources from the police department and out of important calls to go to burglar alarms. These are property crimes. They're the bottom of the rung of things that officers are dispatched to. And anything is, correct me, anything that comes along, higher code call on the computer screen of the officers takes a precedence. It bumps above it. And so a code 13 call may sit on a screen for an hour or more while other things jump ahead of it. Always. It's a property crime. We're responding to a citizen's home that may have had a burglary as a courtesy to check their home out, to see if it has been burglarized, to see if it's safe, correct? We do building searches when we get there, et cetera. And many times these calls go unanswered for a long time, correct?
That's correct.
And other times they're responded to very quickly, depending on the call load at the time the call comes out. I know there's divisions in this city that have run code 30 cars that do nothing but respond to, in the past at least they did.
Yes, sir.
Nothing but that. And they have caught burglars, have they not?
Yes.
So these fallacies that have been floating around that this isn't working is not true. We do catch bad guys. It's a matter of allocation of resources. Right now our allocation is low. We don't have the ability to put a lot of officers out there, so it's a low priority. We get to it when we get to it, and that's the important thing. But someday when we have resources, we might get there faster, might do a better job, correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Mr. Deaton, I think Ms. Hahn really hit on something. The $400,000. We're going to do a lot of corrections on this system in the future years, correct? It's going to be upgraded continually. It's not just one-time deal. It's going to be upgraded. And this can be put in the upgrades in the future. Can that be paid for out of the bond?
I need to look at that. It seems the upgrades of the upgrades in the software would be an appropriate use of that money. Whether the actual software change for the number to come up or not is another issue. But that's and I think we have to look at whether or not that's ultimately how we want to do this in the first place.
Okay.
So we haven't looked at all the cost. That was one of the things the council asked us to do, and we haven't had a chance to go through that
But
process.
theoretically, the bond was given to the city by the taxpayers to upgrade its radio system. And if a future upgrade in the process you're going through would be to add this in, bond council can just say, yeah, that's an appropriate use of the money, right?
Right. It's actually it was a fee, not a bond, but we also need to look at how much money is there. But I think that the upgrades in the software releases is clearly one, as the police department indicated, we will have to do that anyway.
Okay. So this is not going to be probably then a hit to the general fund right now. Bottom line?
A large part of it will not.
Will not. Thank you. I think, Janice and Wendy and particularly Bernard did a great job of summarizing what this is all about. There's no need to do this now. There's a lot of problems, and I want, Cindy, if you want to do anything, get the police department in here and explain why, when they knew this was coming, why do we wait to the 11th hour for us to find all this information out? I think the police department needs to explain that to us. But I don't think we need to do 45. We need to go forward. We need to get this process going and then fix it as we go along, as we frequently do in these kind of big programs. So thank you for bringing it up. I think you need to ask those questions, but I don't think we need to do 45 this now. Thank you.
Mr. Zine.
Thank you, Mr. President and colleagues. Don't go away yet, Mr. Deaton. You're still on the hot seat. I was at Public Safety yesterday where we had a long debate on this matter. Captain Smith, the average response time we know is getting longer for routine calls, and code 30s are not a priority, so they sit in the queue, and if someone gets retoned, they sit in the queue, and we get there eventually, correct?
Yes, sir.
Mr. Deaton, we talked about the revenues from the current process. How much do you anticipate, or do you expect us to lose annually with the system that we have in place, where we're not collecting? What's your estimated total of revenues that are owed the city that aren't being collected because of our inadequate system?
Just one moment.
If you'll please hold my time. Thank you.
At least $2 or $3 million.
3 million. So there's 3 million approximately.
$2 to $3 million minimal. We think if the billing system, one of the benefits of the billing system, if it's properly done, is we get more money, and that can be used, obviously, to eliminate some of the cost. But also, the better billing system provides us better information to determine whether it's a false alarm and whether they have a permit, et cetera, and it's just a better run system.
Okay. I understand that, $2 to $3 million. And listening yesterday to Captain Smith and representatives from the police department, the police department was ready November 1st to implement. People had been trained, the special order was done, and it's not the police department, in my understanding, where the problem is. The problem is somewhat with technology, the information technology, or whatever department, because the police department doesn't do the billing. That's done by someone else. They dispatch, they respond to the calls. So there's another component of the city government that really hasn't performed to make sure this has worked properly. As far as the education, I understand there's a process to educate the public. I don't believe that 245 will solve the problem. The policy has already been established by this body and by the police commission. And when we talk about the policy being established, it was established so we would have officers free in the field to handle other calls, and we would then charge for the false alarms, et cetera, and verification. If we 245 it, we can open this whole can of worms again, which I don't really want to do since we've already established it. So my view of this, police department has done what they're supposed to do, and there's some other component that isn't done what it's supposed to do, and that's why we're here debating whether we want to take jurisdiction. If the police department's willing to hold off for 30 days or 60 days or 90 days, whatever it takes, since it's been forever to this point, I'm willing to support that. Whatever components have to be brought together, and I think you're going to do that, Mr. Deaton, to bring those entities together to finally get this resolved. And I know how the communication system is being built out and constantly redesigned and reevaluated. That's a part of the process that we have to go through as technology changes. So I don't think that 245 unit is the answer. The question is, at what part of the system didn't do what it's supposed to do, since this all of a sudden didn't come about, we're going to implement. We knew we were going to implement this. Everyone agreed we're going to implement it. Was it IT that didn't do the job? Where is the problem and why wasn't it handled? Mr. Deaton.
Forgetting the 245 issue.
Right.
Okay. You don't implement a system in which what you're asking for is to change people's behavior on false alarms by, number one, educating them on the consequences of that, two, providing them notice and fees on a progressive manner, making sure that you know who has a permit and who doesn't have a permit, putting in place an ordinance that you can't install burglar alarms without a permit. There is a whole series of things that needs to be done before you make the very simple situation of a number coming up on a screen and you don't dispatch. That is not implementing this policy.
Right.
All that is doing is going into a database of some question of its validity, determining that there have been 2 false alarms to some address that may or may not be applicable to this particular alarm, and not dispatching. That is not implementing the proposal.
But as you state, under the current policy, which we have in place, we're not even doing good with that policy.
I agree with that 100%.
And how long has that been taking place? Probably for years.
Yes.
So there's many problems, not with the policy, there's problems with the system.
Absolutely.
That isn't delivering what has been established as policy. And holding this up is not going to correct that part of the situation, and we're still going to have our officers bogged down.
But holding this up, as I said in committee yesterday, you have a situation that if your intent is to allow the citizen to know that if they have a burglar alarm and there is a false alarm, at some point we're not going to respond.
And even if they have an alarm and they're going to pay for the permit, and they're going to pay for each response, correct?
They're going to pay for each false alarm.
And then at the third time,
but not for each response. If the response is valid,
then there's no charge.
Then there's no charge.
Correct. And if there's an appeal process where they can go through an appeal.
Right, if for some reason electricity is off, or
Right.
there are
Natural
some other
disasters.
factors that the police commission has set up, they have set up an appeal process.
And we
They
heard
actually have
yesterday
one.
that those appeals have been heard and they
they're
approved
very minor.
a few of
Thank you,
them.
Mr.
But
Last question, Mr. Zine.
I just don't believe it's a 245 issue. I believe it's a issue for technology to get resolved so we can move forward. And I can't fault the police department with not doing what they were asked to do since they were ready to go online.
Thank you. Ms. Mizikowski.
Thank you, Mr. President. Members, I appreciate the debate, and in all honesty, I believe the policy that this council adopted, or at least referred back in terms of our task force to the police commission, and the police commission adopted, is the policy we should move forward with. What I think Mr. Deaton has indicated is that it was not ready, not by the police department, but by the other elements that were part of it. Let me at this time indicate I will withdraw the request to 245, dependent on two things. One, I asked Mr. Koenig from the Police Commission whether or not the Police Commission had taken this up today. He said they had not because of the Brown Act, but that he would bring it up to them next week and make the request that they delay implementation of this policy for 60 days. I'm going to say 60. If we get a report back in 30 days that says all systems are go, fine, we can do it sooner than that. But no, they would not implement it sooner than 60 days from now unless these other systems are in place. But members, be clear. You can't have a policy and say we're going to do one thing and have one system go and no one else in place. On July 29th, we, the council, adopted this motion. One, request the city attorney to draft the implementing ordinances for the amendments to the policy. Has that ordinance been adopted yet? No. Has the ordinance been drafted by the city attorney? Yes. It's in one of our council committees, not public safety. We haven't brought the ordinance forward. We moved that the CAO, CLA, and ITA be requested to report back to public safety and ITGS regarding technology adjustments, and in addition include in their report the cost of creation of the tracking system and a proposed funding plan that would place the cost directly on the alarm companies and the alarm users benefiting from the system with no impact on the general fund. Has that been done? No. We further have moved that the LAPD be requested to report back to public safety on the training. Did they do that? Yes. That's the PD, Mr. Zine is right. PD has done what it wanted, what we asked them to do. We asked CLA to work with GLOSSA. GLOSSA has agreed to share the contract. But the other important elements that this council directed, the ordinance saying this is the policy, the ordinance which said it will be not legal to install a system without a permit, we haven't yet even adopted that. So we also bear responsibility, although the city attorney has given us that ordinance. Not only has Mr. Koenig indicated he will bring this back to the commission, but the chief of staff and the mayor, Mr. McCosker, was here to also indicate that they supported that. They will make that representation to the commission. So on the basis of that affirmation, I will withdraw the 245 motion, but ask that, as we did in committee yesterday, that Mr. Deaton pull together these other city members, city family members. And it may be right. We may decide that it's not worth spending $400,000 to implement the new system. We may find that come January 1st, when the new system goes into place and they put the laptops in for $50,000, that works well and we don't need $400. But we don't know, and we need to have the escalated capability of recapturing the cost if there is that cost and if the system needs it. Those systems were in place. We directed them 4 months ago, 5 months ago. It's time to get it done, and we're going to turn to Mr. Deaton and the CAO to help implement and get those systems in place so that in 60 days, when the system goes into effect, it is all systems go. We do have public education. We have cost recovery. We have defined systems. We can't, as a council, say, well, we're going to do it, but oh yeah, these other parts aren't ready, because this council would be the first one to come back 6 months or a year from now and say, well, how can we implement it when it wasn't ready? How can we implement it when all the parts weren't there? And then we'll go around holding hearings about who we should point the fingers at. These things need to be done. We said they needed to be done. They were the process to be done to implement this policy. Let's get them in place. We know what they are, and we know how to get the systems and the people to put together what we need to put together. So that, I will withdraw that motion based on the request that we asked Mr. Deaton to come back with the other parts of it as quickly as possible, and
We'll
as I
get
say,
a
sooner rather
quick
than
response
later.
from the commission, and then Ms. Houghton and Mr. Reyes are still on the queue.
Dan Koenig, Executive Director of the Police Commission. My credibility in this shoe is very, very important to me, and I want to make it very clear. I will approach the commission president about the request to extend, but I will also caution him that if he agendizes that, that becomes 245able again. So it's his call to make. I will simply bring it to him. That's all I can do. I don't know what his response will be. I haven't discussed it with him.
Ms. Hahn.
Thank you. Well, I appreciate Ms. Miskowski withdrawing the 245. I think it's the right thing for us to do today. But I think as we've debated this today, it's really not the debate about the policy. This policy was a well-thought-out policy by the citizens of Los Angeles. We want it to be implemented, but I think I, of all people, want this policy to work, because ultimately the current policy that we have in place is requiring police officers to respond to all alarms all the time, false or otherwise. This new policy actually is in the best interest of the police department, because after 2 false alarms, then it goes to verified alarm response. It will actually free up resources in some way on the police department. So it's actually a better policy for the police department. We want it to work. We want it to work for the people, but the people need to be educated about it. I just got my notification for my police permit for my alarm in my home. I get that once a year. You'd think that would have been a good opportunity for the police department to let me know, as an alarm user, of this new policy, of the new fees available, of what was happening. No mention of that. So you missed an opportunity. You missed an opportunity with everyone that you're mailing out these renewals to right now. I realize that the City Council still has some things to do, but the Commission has some things to do as well. We want this policy to work well. We want the recommendations of the task force that were adopted by the City Council to be implemented. And it doesn't seem like that's done so far. So we will trust that the Police Commission will delay implementation of this new policy until these things have been properly done.
Mr. Reyes.
Thank you, Council President. I just want to make clear, I heard, is there a commitment to extend to 60 days?
No.
There's no commitment.
I can't make that commitment. That's the commission's decision, not mine. I will take it to the president.
And not to sound facetious, but if the process would have unfolded the way the council directed it, we wouldn't have to 245.
If I could, please, we did what we were supposed to do. There were 2 things that weren't ours.
Okay. And that has been emphasized already.
We didn't do it.
Oh, fine. My point is, we haven't seen or have the results of what was directed, and that's where we're at.
And it's been 3 months.
And how long will it take to get there?
It's been 3 months. The other 2 components are not in place. I don't know. It's not our responsibility. It's theirs.
Mr. Dean, is there hate to pull you away. Hold my time, please. How long will it take to put the other pieces in place so that the council's directive is adhered to?
In committee, I just suggested that they have us report back in 30 days with all the, see how many pieces there are. There's an ordinance, there's some, the billing system, and we'll get the list of, I think we can get the list of permittees from at least a large number of the burglar alarm companies very rapidly, and so being able to put that into a, we'll have some good timelines for the whole thing in, I think, in 30 days.
If we 245 this, since we can't get a commitment for the 60 days, we can still achieve the same thing, correct? We can still...
I don't think that the police department will implement a policy that I think is very evident won't work real well.
I want to say, assuming, let's say we 245 this, under that,
that would be 21 days.
21 days. So in those 21 days, we can work to get the pieces together.
We could, but I sincerely believe that the police commission will defer. That's my personal view. I have more confidence in Mr. Koenig.
Thank you.
I don't want to represent something that I can't deliver on to this board, this group. That's all I'm saying.
Mr. Weiss.
If I tell you it's done, it's done. I'm telling you, I'll take it to them. That's all I can do.
Mr. Weiss.
Thank you, Mr. President. I appreciate that, and Ms. Miskowski and I were just talking about, we remember in the Back to the Future, I say Back to the Future, you say Groundhog Day. In the spirit of the day, I remember similar, and Ms. Miskowski remembers similar sort of discussions between Ms. Hahn and trying to get commitments out of the commission, and we understand the executive director can't bind the commission.
Right.
But here's what I'm puzzling over right now. Seems like everybody in this room, regardless of what side they are on as to the ultimate merits of this policy, agrees there should be a delay. Ms. Hahn and Ms. Gruhl, or at least are conceding that a delay is appropriate and you would not object to a delay pending working out the sort of bugs that we were talking about. I would like to see that and then some, but at least there's an area that we agree on. And yet last Tuesday, the commission voted to greenlight a policy which now everybody at the table, including Mr. Koenig and your command staff, agrees you can't do right now.
I don't agree.
So you could do that right now.
I don't agree at all.
So what, I'm trying to understand why we should feel any comfort level that the commission will in fact defer while this work is going on.
I think the commission would have to consider the clear desire of the vast majority of the council in making its call on whether or not to delay.
Well, I hope they do that. It was disappointing to me that with those very clear items pending on the table, the technology piece, the ordinance piece, the fees piece not being in place, that the commission went ahead and acted the way it did last week. And based on that representation, I will agree to what Ms. Sikowski suggested, to defer this matter today and to withdraw the 245. But I do say that it will be a bad Groundhog Day if once again we find ourselves with a department trying to implement something that does not make sense and has not been scrubbed, hasn't had the T's crossed and the I's dotted.
If I may, the commission's decision to move forward was predicated upon confidence that we do know when a location has had 2 or more alarms. It is an interim solution, but it's a workable interim solution. We've been waiting 90 days for an ordinance to change the fees and require a permit when you install an alarm. How hard is it? Doesn't seem to be all that difficult. Mr. Deaton is prepared with the subscribers from the alarm industry to move forward on that. I understand immediately, as soon as there's an indication this is going into effect. The commission's decision to move forward was based upon the fact that right now I'm responding to every alarm. At least with the 2-alarm policy, I'm not responding to the ones that seem to have chronic problems. It's better than what we have right now, and every day we delay it, we continue to send units to locations where we know it's not going to be a good alarm.
And I'll just repeat what I said yesterday in committee. The answer to that, in my view, is to change what we have now back towards what the commission originally decided to do earlier this year, which in my view was good public policy for the city. That didn't carry the day, and I'm hopeful that someday it will. Thank you, Mr. President.
It didn't carry the day yet. I think the commission wants to try this, see what happens.
Mr. Weiss. Other members wishing to be heard on this item? If not, we have the motion for the assertion of jurisdiction withdrawn. Are there any remaining items before us? Ms. Clerk?
No, council should just receive and file this motion.
Okay, without objection, this matter is received and filed. Let's proceed to the next item.
There is a special one on the desk presented by Councilmember Perry and seconded by Councilmember Parks, and the maker of the motion will speak to the findings.
No comment from the city attorney? No comment from the city attorney on the findings?
No, the maker of the motion will make the findings.
Ms. Perry?
Thank you very much, Mr. President. I'm introducing this motion today to waive the fees for a meeting so that the MTA can vote on Friday, November the 7th, was contacted by the mayor's office and asked if I would introduce this motion to enable the MTA to use the convention center for this important vote. I was pleased to introduce this motion, and I hope that my colleagues will support me. I know that we are all hoping for a positive resolution to the strike, and that the strike ends soon so that our 400,000 commuters can get to where they need to go on public transportation. But also note that I and many of my colleagues stand here today in solidarity with those who are striking and support them as well. But we all know that both sides will hopefully be able to come to the table and discuss a resolution.
Ms. Perry, can I interrupt you for just a second? Can I have order in chambers, please? It's getting very loud behind the horseshoe.
While we don't know whether the strike will end on Friday, I think this is a big step for the some 2,800 MTA workers to come to the table, voice their concerns, hopefully be able to come to a resolution and vote this Friday at the convention center. So I ask for an aye vote.
Okay. The findings are currently before us. Anybody wishing to be heard on the findings? Seeing none, let's open the roll on the findings. Please close the roll and tabulate the vote.
15 ayes.
Okay, special one is now before us on the motion itself. Members wishing to be heard on the motion itself. Mr. Reyes.
Thank you, Council President. I just felt compelled, given the fact that I received several phone calls from many of my constituents who are transit dependent, a couple who have lost their jobs, they've been having to walk to work, some walking as many as 2-3 hours at a time, hitchhiking, doing everything they can to get to work. I had one particular gentleman who literally was breaking down because not only lose his job, he just had a baby, newlywed, and didn't see any light at the end of the tunnel. So the hardships on this, on our communities, are very real. I want to thank Councilmember Perry for bringing this forward, but we need to push forward. We need to find a way to shed some support to those who are transit dependent, those who are suffering the most. Many of us who have vehicles have the luxury of getting from point A to point B, and for many thousands of people, it's such a hardship. They are losing their jobs, and it is a severe impact on over half of the city, so hopefully it can come to a conclusion.
Thank you, Mr. Reyes. Other members wishing to be heard on special one? Seeing none, let's open the roll, close the roll, and tabulate the vote.
15 ayes.
That is approved. Forthwith, please. Next item.
This is the time for comments from the public on items not on council's agenda.
And the council calls forward Dan Weisman.
Dan Weisman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It's a pleasure to speak before you again today. And I want to come right on the tail of Mr. Reyes' comments, because that's what I wanted to speak about anyway. Many of us who are in this room are here late. We're here late because the MTA doesn't allow the rest of us to get here either, whether we have cars or not. My usual way of getting here would be the Red Line from North Hollywood for 90 cents as a senior. Thank you very much. Saved me some gas, saved me a lot of time, saved me a lot of effort. Traffic has become a terrible problem in our city. It's one I hope that you members of the council will address directly and promptly. I'm very concerned that I see how many cars are out there today, because I'm wondering if when the MTA strike is over, if those cars aren't still going to be there. And I think that all we have seen over the years is more and more traffic, and more delays in our getting where we want to get. This council has a strong responsibility to help all of us to get here, whether we rely on public transportation or private. I wanted to speak on item 55, which was the Sherman Way issue that you took up a few minutes ago. I want to thank you for all of us who live in that neighborhood, because what is going on is Valerio Street, several blocks north of Sherman Way, is being used as a main thoroughfare. The north-south streets are being blocked because the right-hand lanes have been taken away for right turns. The valley is becoming gridlocked. I know this is not just a valley problem, but it certainly is pervasive, and I hope you can help all of us, and you can be assured that we are going to help you. One last comment quickly. You see in this room 3 members of the Van Nuys Neighborhood Council. The neighborhood councils are coming forward. More and more of us are going to be here, and I think you're going to see a great deal of cooperation, a great deal of support from all of us in your activities. Thank you for listening to me.
Thank you very much. This concludes public comment for today's meeting. Madam Clerk, next order of business, please.
Council has motions for posting and referral.
Motion shall be posted and referred.
There are excuses on the desk. Councilmember Cardenas requests to be excused Friday, November 21st to arrive at 10:30 for city business. That meets council policy.
Mr. Cardenas is excused.
Councilmember Smith requests to be excused Wednesday, November 5th to leave at 1:15 for city business. A motion is required.
Mr. Reyes moves. Mr. Smith is excused.
And that clears the desk, Mr. President.
Looks like we have a couple of announcements. Mr. Weiss.
Just want to ask if item 53 could go forthwith to the mayor, please.
Forthwith on 53. Ms. Perry? Mr. Parks? For an announcement? Any other announcements? Mr. Labange?
Last night was a wonderful evening. Just want to let you know at Felipe's 95th anniversary, the beautiful resolution that Mr. Reyes and Ms. Hahn presented, and the Mayor Hahn came and got behind the counter, and Antonio Villaraigosa got behind the counter. I got behind the counter. It's a lot of work, and we salute the workers who work at Felipe's, who do such a wonderful job on their 95th anniversary. It was great fun. All the people were there. And I just wanted to remind everybody it's still a great place to go, Felipe's. A wonderful evening.
Thank you, Mr. Labange. Other announcements? Any other announcements? If not, please rise for adjourning motions. If I can ask everybody to please rise for adjourning tributes. Adjourning motions, colleagues. Mr. Parks.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have a adjourning motion in honor of Reverend Floyd Massey, Jr., the pastor of Macedonia Baptist Church in Watts from 1965 to 1987. He was a leader in both the Black National Baptist Convention of the United States and also the American Baptist Church of the United States. He's a veteran minister who co-authored a book in 1976 on church administration, a perspective of black leadership. The book outlined the need for strong ministers in urban churches to remain an important reference point in church organizations. He was an active member of the NAACP, also a member of the Martin Luther King International Board of Preachers of Morehouse College. He has a stellar educational career. He died at the age of 88 on Tuesday, October 28th. He has made significant contributions to the city of LA. His funeral will be held at the Second Baptist Church on Saturday, November the 6th at 11 a.m. He leaves his wife, Ethel, of 59 years.
Mr. Smith.
Thank you, Mr. President. Ask the council adjourn for Lottie Marie Schaefer. Lottie Marie Schaefer was a 12th District resident who worked for the city's attorney's office for 25 years. She worked along with this council primarily in the Legislative Services Division for George Buchanan and John Doherty, followed by John Haggerty and Gail Weingart. George Buchanan once referred to Lottie as his right hand. She's survived by her sister Sharon, son Ron, and his wife Tracy, daughters Roberta, Cindy, nieces Shannon, Amanda, and grandchildren Nicholas and Jessica.
President, I'd like to second that. Lottie was a tremendous, inspiring person, and I'm sure the clerk's office knew her because they cross Main Street so often in that. But Greg, I'd just like to second that. She was a wonderful executive assistant.
I would like to be on that as well, and I believe that she was here with George when we introduced them just about 4 weeks ago, 6 weeks ago on the City Council.
Mr. Weiss.
Thank you, Mr. President. Colleagues, I'd like to ask you to join me in adjourning in memory of Molly Harari, who was born in Brooklyn but lived in L.A. for over 50 years, and she was part of an extraordinary philanthropic family that was very active in Los Angeles and in our Jewish community. She played a large role in the community and in the lives of her extraordinarily large family. She is survived by her 3 children, her 9 grandchildren, and her 5 great-grandchildren.
Ms. Gruhl.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'd like to ask that we adjourn in memory of Eleanor Everett Frick, who died October 21st, at the age of 84, after a 5-year battle with cancer. And there was an article, obituary, in the Los Angeles Times. Eleanor was born on January 26, 1990, in Corona, California, and grew up in Huntington Park. She entered UCLA in 1938 as a junior transfer, majoring in Spanish. And in 1941, while working as a courier on the SS Catalina steamer, Eleanor met Carl H. Frick, Jr., and Eleanor and Carl married while he served in World War II. The last year of the war, she served as an assistant director for the Red Cross Recreation Program at the Santa Ana Army Air Corps Base. She is someone who taught after-school classes sponsored by the PATA. She became involved with Children's Hospital when her son, Steve, was born with a defective esophagus. She was a 42-year member of the Whittier Guild of Children's Hospital of Los Angeles, a member of the Friendly Hills Women's Club, a member of the Rio Honda Symphony Guild, Whittier Bruin Club, and where I met her, the UCLA Gold Shield program at UCLA. She was also a 51-year member of St. Matthias Episcopal Church. She was a loving and supporting mother to her 3 sons, and she played tennis through her 80th year of life. Her interests were gardening, music, theater, travel, and piano, and she really lived a full life. She is survived by her sons, Leon and Steve Frick, her daughter, Mary Frick, grandchildren, Haley Frick, Lisa Frick Wilson, Greg Stoneham, Kylie Stenham, and her great-grandchildren, Julie and Olivia Wilson. I ask we adjourn in her memory today.
Thank you, Ms. Gruhl. Other tributes? Colleagues, I ask that you join me in adjourning in memory of Erwin Gershwin, uncle of David Gershwin from my office. Erwin Gershwin, the son of Hilda and Herman Gershwin, was born March 18, 1935 in the Bronx, New York. Erwin passed away November 3rd of this year in Las Vegas, Nevada, after having only recently been diagnosed of abdominal cancer. He was a veteran serving the United States Army in Korea immediately after the Korean conflict, a graduate of both Los Angeles City College and UCLA. Erwin Gershwin worked throughout his life, giving back to the community by working in Southern California, both as a social worker and a teacher. Later in life, he became an independent businessman and was actively working until his diagnosis. He will be missed by his family and friends. And in addition, colleagues, I believe Mr. Cardenas will want to join me on this. Reverend Alicia Broadus has passed away, and I'd like for us to adjourn in her memory. She was born on October 9, 1937 to Hillary T. and Rosa L. Broadus in Warren, Arkansas. Her family moved to Los Angeles after World War II. In the late 1940s, her family moved to the San Fernando Valley, where she joined what was then the Community Baptist Church. In May 1955, Alicia, her mother, and her 4 siblings became founding members of the Calvary Baptist Church, where her father, the late Reverend Hillary T. Broadus, was the pastor. Alicia met and married the love of her life, Mr. Lonnie T. Duncan. To this union, 7 children were born. Reverend Dr. Alicia Broadus Duncan was a loving, generous, and patient mother and wife, and was the best grandmother in the neighborhood. To her brothers and sisters, she was a spiritual counselor. To her father, she was secretary and sounding source of pride. To her mother, she was loving, supportive, and an attentive daughter, as well as a best friend. And just as importantly, to the community, she was an inspiration and committed community leader throughout the 7th District, having served most recently as the director of the Northeast Valley Multipurpose Senior Center in Pacoima.
All members?
Yes, part of the Broadus family, all members. Any other tributes? Madam Clerk, please call the roll. Thank you all very much. This meeting is adjourned.